All right, so welcome back to the Weekly Boost podcast. This week was episode 25 already. Yeah. 6 months of doing it. It's been fun, but this week we have our second professional hockey player, Matt Donovan. We'll get into his story later on. Similar to kind of Mike Liambus, and you'll kind of notice same undertones in hockey stories, moving all over the place and playing at different places. But we're really fortunate to welcome Matt to our show, so welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So if you're viewing this on YouTube, Austin and I are together. It's a pretty unique experience. We kind of prefaced it in the episode beforehand that, this is going to be his a little vacation for him to come visit. And ironically, Matt Donovan is the first Oklahoman born and raised to play in the NHL. Is that correct?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Where are you from? Edmond, right?
Yep, from Edmond. Grew up here, and grew up here until I moved away when I was 16. But yeah, first born and raised.
So you're in Oklahoma as well right now?
Yep, I'm in Oklahoma right now, just trying to figure out what we're doing for this season, this weird COVID season we're having right now. I think everything's a little messed up, so I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do.
For sure. Because I know it was a couple weeks ago following the Admirals, they had, opted out. And it was pretty cool. They partnered with Chicago Wolves, and I don't know who their AHL or their NHL parent team is.
Carolina. Yep.
So it's kind of a mad scramble, right, to find teams for a lot of guys and make sure you don't miss out on that season. So talk to us about what your experience is with this and kind of how you handled that.
Yeah, I mean, it's been crazy. You probably went over it with Liambus that our season got shut down, I think, pretty much when all the other professional sports were getting shut down right around mid-March. Mm-hmm. And you kind of they tell you to go home and wait it out and see what happens. And then it just keeps getting worse and worse. And then you're stuck at home and you feel like you can't leave, kind of like everyone felt for a long time. And yeah, that's where it kind of ended up. And now everyone's kind of itching to get back into things and start playing hockey again. And everything's still pretty messed up with teams opting out and the NHL bubble, and now they have a new season. So yeah, hopefully it all gets back to normal soon. But yeah, that's where we're at now, just trying to figure out what I'm going to do this shortened season and try and get back on the ice.
Has training been impacted at all? Like, I know it's a little bit of an off-season kind of not delay, but it's a little weird because obviously we have to follow all the protocol and stuff like that. And I know it's really nice to be able to practice and train with your teammates and all that sort of stuff. But has there been any difficulty with that in that process?
At the very beginning, it was hard because you go through this phase of a couple months where you don't know when you're going to play again, and you're kind of just sitting at home. You can't go to the rink, you can't go to the gym. The first couple months, everything was closed, so you go into kind of this depression, like you have such a set routine that you kind of get down on yourself, and there's no end in sight. So it was one of those things where you kind of get depressed, and that's kind of what led me to getting into other things. And I'm sure we can get into this too, but I took my real estate test, and that kind of took my mind off of everything and kept me busy. And that was the main reason why I did that. But yeah, eventually we could get back into the gyms, and I started buying stuff, workout equipment for my garage. So I just work out in my garage every day in Milwaukee. And then eventually we could go back into the arena with the trainer. But there was only a handful of us that were still in Milwaukee over the summer. And eventually we could get back on the ice. And then we traveled back here to Oklahoma for a month or two. We traveled back and forth between here and Milwaukee, and my dad runs a rink here in Oklahoma. So it's pretty easy to get on the ice here when I need to. So that's a perk of being here. So yeah, it was tough at the beginning, like I said, but kind of got back to normal within the last couple months.
Awesome. Yeah, that's good to hear. Yeah, that's Blazers, right? I think we drove past it, right? I took Austin to Oklahoma City to show him the memorial. And there's a couple of food places. We went to like the Collective and things like that. Yep. And then I passed it, and I was like, "Yep, there's where he runs camps." And kind of, like I said, this, the first time we had scheduled it, things kind of fell through. But it's like we're really fortunate that it happen now because Austin can kind of see what Oklahoma is about.
Yeah.
And it's really central to your story. So let's start there. Talk to us a little bit about how growing up in a traditionally non-hockey state, how were there struggles trying to, get to a place where you're, going to school for hockey, in a position to get drafted, things like that.
I think I was so naive to everything growing up about how good I was. My dad and my best friend Josh Berge, who your girlfriend lives next to. There was a couple of us that were pretty good players, and we eventually moved on to play. But we were just kids in Oklahoma playing, like going to the rink because my dad ran the rink, and we would just spend all day there on the ice and playing hockey. So I don't think we knew that we were going anywhere with it.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually my dad's like, do you want to do this? Like, cause you can't be here anymore. You're not going to go anywhere if you stay here in Oklahoma. So, at 16, I was like, yeah, let's do it. And so I had to move down to Dallas to play, AAA hockey cause there's only AA here in Oklahoma. So had to go down to Dallas for a year. And then I got drafted into the United States Hockey League, the USHL, which is a junior league. That you go to before college, and I got drafted in the USHL, and then went and played there in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, for 2 years, my junior and senior years of high school. So I went to 3 different high schools, and then went on to play at the University of Denver.
Nice. Yeah, that's 3 high schools. Like I couldn't imagine. Right? You just get a group of friends, and luckily with hockey, it's kind of a really it's a community. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But still, you're bouncing around from different, schools. It's got to be tough, especially high schools.
Yeah, I think you kind of hang out with your hockey guys, your friend. You make friends at high school, but it's not. You don't have a lot in common. Like you have way more in common with your hockey teammates and you're gone way more from high school than you are at high school, so you don't get to know those kids a lot. So it's more of the hockey community that you stick with, and I was fortunate enough to go to some good high schools where they were good about me being gone all the time and me being able to make up my schoolwork and stuff. And then, and then I went to the University of Denver after my senior year in Cedar Rapids.
Yeah. Austin and I met in college playing baseball. And one of the things that I was really fortunate for was you get that group of friends right away. You have your 30 guys that are on the team, and you're always doing things together. It definitely makes those transitions pretty easy, in my opinion, and sounds like yours as well.
Yeah, definitely. You always find that group of guys that you're close with right off the bat, and you kind of hang with them for forever, it seems.
Yeah, it's weird how that happens. Yeah, it's just like simultaneous. You're just like, all right, we're friends now. Despite your differences, like in practice or whatever, it's like at the end of the day, they're your guys. So
yep, exactly.
And I'm 2 years out of playing, or not professional, but collegiate baseball. I wish, right? And I know Ben's a couple years out as well. And it's remarkable the fact that these individuals that we played with a handful of years ago are still some of our closest confidants and our friends, and like people that we still keep in touch with. And I like the fact that you've traveled, you've been around numerous cities and numerous locations doing something that you love, because fortunately for me, I kind of went through the same thing where all throughout middle school into high school, I bounced around from, city to city because my parents moved a lot for my dad's work. And I can totally attest to the idea that the people that you knew in middle school for 2 months, it wouldn't be the same people you'd know in the next 2 months. Like you'd be at a different school doing entirely different things. And on top of that, throwing baseball in the mix, making new teammates was, I don't want to say it was easy for me, but I could always rely on my teammates to be people that I'd have with me forever. And obviously looking what Ben and I are doing right now, we're people that have been removed from our sport for a couple of years now, still doing something together and still reaching out to other people that have done our sport. So it's pretty remarkable that you can see that across not only baseball, but other sports as well. I would have assumed that it was the same way, but it's nice to hear that the hockey family kind of stays pretty tight knit as well as baseball and sports.
you for the most part, you all have the same. You all like the same stuff, but at the same time, like, you're going to battle with those guys, so you go through more with those guys than you do with just a classmate or something.
Yeah.
So they know you way better than just a regular classmate would.
Yeah.
So obviously you said how the team kind of broke up, right? We're in March, you guys top of the league, right? You know, you can harp on that, if you will, because I know Mike Liambus had some words about it too. They thought they could really do it, and Milwaukee, it's a little disappointing as well. But now you guys are kind of split up. Do you think? Like, I feel like this is a rhetorical question, but like, are you going to miss that where you build that like camaraderie with those guys, and especially that group? I know there's a lot like changes, goaltenders and things like that, but are you going to miss that group, that locker room? Or is it for the most part kind of, sorry, I feel like I'm rambling. Is it for the most part, is it like the same core group of guys where you get this culture that kind of builds in that locker room? It's the Milwaukee, culture now that, you're on these, different teams.
Yeah. I think that's a big part of being a general manager is building that culture, and a coach. They build that culture, and then the general manager has to keep those guys that are going to continue that culture. You know what I'm saying? In sports, it's probably goes right with baseball. It's the same thing. Those main group of core guys are going to continue that culture and know how the places should be run, and things like that. So it is tough knowing that we were in first place, and in all sports growing up, you don't get a lot of opportunities to win a championship. You guys know that. And when you're first place in the league, it feels like you're losing that chance, because I mean, some guys do get a lot of chances, like Tom Brady wins Super Bowls every year, but not a lot of people get to win championships every year. So it's disappointing. And it's also disappointing because we had the same group of guys coming back this year, and the season kind of got screwed up. So who knows what it'll look like next year, but hopefully most of the same guys will be back.
And it kind of reminds me of the situation. I know we're going to talk about how this pandemic has impacted everybody's lives, but it just, with sports in our realm, especially Milwaukee, what happened with the Bucks, right? They're leading the league and everything, their first place, and then the pandemic and the quarantine hit like full force, and we're forced to go into everything. And then sure enough, the team that was in first place had that momentum completely cut short, and obviously the rest is history, who wins the NBA finals. And so I can only imagine what it feels like to have that platform taken away, that first place platform, because you've put in the blood, sweat, and tears to get there. You've won the games, you've dealt with the losses, you've injuries and all the rest. And it's just hoping for the same to come out of the situation, and it's as best as we can do. But we're just gonna have to deal with it, right? And that's what we do, is we move on and we adapt and overcome. That's what we've said in many of our podcast episodes.
No, in sports too, you guys know that like there's turnover in every year. So guys are going to come in that are different. There's going to be young guys, older guys that come in that are different. Guys get traded, sign other places. So there's always something different every year. You just try and, like you said, adapt and get to know your new guys and bring them in and hope to teach them how things work and the culture, like you guys were talking about, and keep the momentum going. But obviously it doesn't always work like that. Talking like the Bucks, like you get a stoppage of play, you lose your momentum. So it's kind of a start from scratch kind of thing, but you just kind of hope that you have all the right pieces and you can kind of start from where you ended off.
So let's take a couple steps back. You talked about getting your realtor's license and the things, and how that kind of took your mind off of it. Besides that, like at the beginning of, season shutdown, pandemic and everything, were there any other ways that you kind of were able to take your mind off everything? Because everybody was in this like state, like what's going to happen, and especially in your case, because that's your livelihood, right? So how did you kind of navigate those waters initially in that early springtime?
I had just signed a new 2-year deal with Milwaukee, so I think I was riding that high. Because a lot of people didn't have jobs, and a lot of athletes didn't have jobs for the next year, and they didn't know if they were going to be able to get a contract. And I think you've seen it and read that a lot of guys have had to retire this year due to there not being any jobs or any money out there for teams to give out. So my wife and I were just very happy that I signed this new deal, and we're very fortunate to have a contract for 2 more years and some stability. And obviously that is kind of screwed up now with the situation of Milwaukee opting out and me having to find a job. But yeah, at the beginning, that was our thinking, is stay positive. But at the same time, I think everyone kind of went through those feelings of we're stuck here and we don't know when this is going to end. I have 2 kids, one's 4-year-old boy and one 1-year-old boy, and I was stuck in a house with them for months, and that wasn't fun. So I'm glad we could finally get outside, and this is kind of ended, but hopefully it'll end sometime soon.
Yeah. So I think I mentioned this before we started recording. This is Austin's first year of kind of diving into the hockey world. Yeah. And, episodes like this kind of give them a glimpse of what it's about. And we talked about it before, but like, if you could just tell us what the hockey community means, I think I mentioned this in the previous episode, but like every interview is like, we didn't need to do this. Like we did this, like it's all the we over me thing. So if you can kind of like talk to that point of hockey as a whole, kind of like not like a elevator speech of why hockey is so great, for Austin, but like just kind of introduce him to what that's all about.
It's people ask me that, and you watch like LeBron and basketball players, and I think it's just because hockey's such the ultimate team sport. Like guys are diving in front of pucks to block 100-mile-per-hour slap shots for the team. You're doing everything for the team. There's not a lot of individual stuff going on a hockey rink or in a hockey locker room. And if someone sees that there is some individual thinking going on, there's 20 other guys that are going to call you out for it. Yeah. And you don't want to be that guy. I think it's just a mentality of the team first, individual second is kind of how everyone thinks in hockey, and that's how it should be. I mean, if the team doesn't have success, you're not going to have success.
And I think it's kind of remarkable that you see that day in and day out. Recently, since I've been down here, we've been watching hockey pretty much every day, kind of getting accustomed to it. We've been playing shell, kind of getting the sticks going and stuff like that. But I think Ben and I can both speak for this, that in baseball, the individuality is much more abundant. Because I know Ben and I were both pitchers. He was a position player for a long time before being turned into that. But it was a position that we played where we were in control of everybody else's destiny on the field, right? Because as a pitcher, you touch the baseball literally every single instance of action on the field. And so looking at and watching these hockey games, and just today we watched a couple guys dive in front of shots. Like you see the speedometer 91 miles an hour. Like that's incredible. None of us ever threw that hard in baseball, but there was never an instance where people would just willingly dive in front of that. And if they do, they get called back. So it's a bunch of rule stuff with that. But just watching people hit the ice and, put their bodies on the line for the good of the team and for the logo on the front, not the name on the back kind of stuff. It's pretty remarkable. And you don't really see that with a lot of sports nowadays, because of we have this vast social media proponent to it where everybody has to make their own brand. I don't know how much of this, but how much of this everybody's seen that listens or watches our podcast, but a lot of the things going on with like ESPN talking about these younger players coming into all aspects, all leagues, the NFL, NBA, and all that sort of stuff, talking about how when they get there, they've had these aspirations of what they want their brand to be. And sort of forget that idea of, well, the team is what really got you there. Being on a winning team or being on a team that you felt as a family I think that gets forgotten, and it's really nice to hear your stories with the Admirals as well as your other hockey teams that you've played on. That family is important, and not just your family at home, but your family on the ice. And that, I think that's something that needs to be reiterated to a lot of athletes on the up and coming, as well as ones that have been in their respective leagues for a while. And so it's reassuring to hear that from somebody that has played the sport their entire life, and that they've seen it and they've done it all, and continuing to do it all. So it's really nice to hear that. So thank you.
Yeah, not to mention, I'm sure you Leambus about fighting. Like, guys are taking literally fists to the face for your teammates. It's just one of those things. Like, you see MMA fighters fighting each other, but they're doing it for themselves.
Yeah,
they're doing it for, like, hockey guys don't have to fight, but they want to do it because there's certain unwritten rules in hockey. Like, if you get cheap shotted, you better be ready to defend yourself, because someone's going to protect their teammates, because it's the ultimate team sport.
No, I completely agree.
Yeah, it's when that pandemic kind of first started and things get pushed back and things, I could not get into a sport, like into baseball. Like, and that's hard for me because I've been playing it since I was 4. But I started to get into football, but things still didn't feel right. But now I feel like this is an opportunity, and we'll follow it together. And he's trying to pick his favorite team and that kind of stuff. But you can actually get into it. And he was telling today while we were watching, like, whoa, like the momentum shifted. I'm like, yeah, like you can feel it, and when you're there, it's 10 times better. To actually feel that momentum shift. But we had this question with Leambus, and I don't want to keep, like, this is our episode, but let's talk about the wave of emotion when you stepped on the ice first time with the Islanders for your first NHL game. Like, what was that like, and were you able to kind of like, bottle it all up and focus, or was that kind of like you're all over the place? It was blackout experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I definitely blacked out. I don't remember anything from that game. It has been a while now, but I don't think I could have remembered it the next day. No, it's the NHL. Not many people can say they've played at the highest level of any sport. So it's definitely nerve-wracking when you get there. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why I didn't stick, was because I was afraid of making mistakes, and you can't think like that. You got to trust yourself and trust your abilities. And you watch the NHL now, it's the guys that have trust in themselves and faith that their abilities and their skating and their passing and their shooting and their playmaking, they're not afraid to make mistakes. They're going to go out there and play hard, and if a mistake happens, they're going to brush it off. So it was, that first game was definitely nerve-wracking, and like I said, I don't think I could tell you one thing that happened all game.
Yeah, and there's that that road back to it, right? You play overseas. Sweden for me is a place I really want to get to eventually. It's on my bucket list. But you play overseas and you come back, and that journey. Like, was it hard to stay on that path, or once you got a taste of it, it was like you know what you want to get back to? Was it hard to kind of get back to that, I guess?
Yeah, no, it definitely was, because at first my whole thinking was go over there to get better and get back to the NHL. After my first year, you don't see a lot of guys coming back to try and make it to the NHL again. You see a lot of guys going over there and figuring out the money's pretty good, the lifestyle's pretty good. It's better than what you're gonna have in the AHL, maybe, in most cities and organizations. So they end up sticking over there because it's a good lifestyle and good money. But I wanted to go over there with the goal of coming back and playing in the NHL. So I played my first year there. I liked it. I really liked it. I didn't think I was going to have a good opportunity. I didn't have great numbers after my first year. So I signed a second year, played really well. And I felt like I want to do this. I want to come back. I know I'm going to have to take a pay cut to play in the AHL, but I want to try it out again. I want to make it back to the NHL and prove to myself and people that I can. And I'm still a good enough player to play in the NHL. And fortunately, I took that leap and signed in Milwaukee. And a couple months into the season, Nashville signed me to a 2-year deal, and eventually got to play for Nashville a couple games, and that was my whole goal. Obviously, I still think I can play in the NHL, and I want to play in the NHL, but I'm 30 now, and I know it's not totally realistic, but there's always a chance. Teams are always looking for players, so not totally out of that mindset, but what you're asking, when I went over there and came back, and it felt good once I got back to the NHL. It was like my goal was reached, and I proved to myself and everyone that I could play in the NHL again, and I did.
Yeah.
Kind of talking about like the pop culture thing, right? And I mentioned playing NHL like on video game systems. It's always kind of cool to see individuals when they make it on the video games, right? Like that's something I know as a kid growing up playing baseball and stuff like that. I'm sure Ben has the same thing, but we played a lot of like Slugfest and like MLB The Show and all sorts of stuff. And it's that aspiration that I think we all have as athletes, that's like that goal, as superficial as it may sound, as making it in a video game, but it's like one of those things, like you can actually play as yourself. You can like, I'm sure, I know you see like stuff on like ESPN about NBA players, like, okay, who do you play as when you play 2K? And they're like, oh, I play as Kevin Durant, or I play as LeBron James, when they don't play as themselves. But I think it's remarkable that nowadays that we can have these sorts of, they're not lofty goals by any means, because if you put the dedication into it and you put the work in, it's possible, because you have to believe in yourself and all that. But I just think it's quite hysterical that we can now today play as yourself in a video game. Like, I think it's cool. It's one of the coolest things ever. And it's like I think from now moving forward, now on, will be a major staple in a lot of individual athletes' aspirations. It's just something that I've noticed.
I agree. I don't play a ton of video games, but it is when you think about it that way, and you have kids come up to you and be like, "Hey, I played as you on the video game." It's like that's pretty cool to hear. It's a worldwide video game, and I'm on it. It's pretty cool to hear.
Yeah. I was telling Austin today, there's so many streamers and all these like people just put so much time into video games, and I mean, we're victims of that too when we have downtime or anything. But like Austin said, we live in a world that kind of revolves around that pop culture, that need for attention, that immediate response kind of thing, and it's pretty cool. Like you said, when somebody comes up to you and is like, "Oh yeah, I scored 3 goals," as you in Chell or something. It's a unique thing that a lot of people get to experience. So,
especially
it is very unique, and it's one of the perks of this job, I guess you could say.
Yeah. So what was I going to say next? It was,
you're going to talk about his Squatch.
Oh yeah. So let's transition to that life outside hockey, right? Okay. So when did your Squatch Hockey company kind of come about, I guess, and talk a little bit about that story? Because athletes need to build their athletic brand, but there are people like you. I think Rich Kloon was the one to bring it up to Liambus, like, hey, you got to start thinking about what's after. Was that like a goal of you with this company, or was it more so otherwise driven?
It was more of a giving back kind of thing for me. I've always done so. When I was in college, I would do these hockey camps in the summer at my dad's rink to make a little money as a college student. And then when I turned pro, I didn't need that money, and my focus turned more on giving back to kids and to the hockey community in Oklahoma City that I grew up in. And that kind of turned into Squatch Hockey, where I do camps in Oklahoma City, and now I've done it in Milwaukee for a couple of years. And I sell hats and sweatshirts when I have time and it's not COVID. that all of it goes towards raising money for the Zach Tays Foundation, which is a foundation here in Oklahoma that raises money to get kids and keep kids in hockey in Oklahoma City. So, yeah, that's my focus is right now is not to raise money for myself, but to give as much money as I can by doing these camps and lessons and selling hats and shirts to back into the hockey community that gave so much to me growing up.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's incredible. You can hear it in your voice. You're all about giving back, and that's such an important thing. It's really what makes the world go round, in my opinion. That idea of reciprocity and doing things that are basically selfless, right? Like you don't have to put your time into it. You don't have to, but it gave you so much. So now let's have others be able to experience something like that. A lot of times, hockey especially, I didn't have options by me really growing up in southeastern Wisconsin, or like I was naive to it. Like, you had said you were kind of naive to the whole idea of it. But again, hockey, especially, like I said, it's a unique sport that's expensive a lot of times.
Yep.
You're traveling all over the place to find teams to play a lot of times. But, raising money and being able to provide that here in the metro area where I am now, it means a lot, I think. And it's really important.
Yeah, that was kind of my thinking is give back to what gave me so much. I'm like we said, it's the first Oklahoma born and raised, and I'm hoping to see a lot more come after me, and I'm hoping to help out in any way I can.
And you're exactly right about hoping to see other individuals come up behind you that are from your same background, especially growing up in Oklahoma. Especially when I think about it, the first thing that doesn't come to my mind is hockey. I don't think that Oklahoma is a hockey city or a hockey state by any means. And I was shocked at first hearing that, because you think of the South and the South Midwest as football or baseball states. So it was really cool to see that somebody can come from a background that really doesn't give the opportunity to do something that you do, and you made the best of it and you made the most of it, and you went through the adversity of that to get to the platform that you are on today. I can sort of attest to that with our spring baseball. I know we're going to keep bouncing hockey back and forth, but I don't live in a climate. Ben didn't live in a climate that was opportune for baseball. We had, extremely short season because of weather, and especially with regulations through certain agencies that go through our sporting stuff, we're really limited, right? And so we were always at a disadvantage from our southern states where they're in the sun 24/7 year round. So I guess I don't want to keep going back to the hockey thing, because there's a lot to you that's not hockey, right? Like I know hockey was your brand for a long time, but you're extending out of that. So I guess, do you see any adversities like that you felt in Oklahoma in your ventures today, in your real estate opportunities, or as well as your Squatch hockey company? Do you see any of those things sort of overlapping, or are there totally different challenges to that?
No, I think hockey, there's so many things that you learn about life inside the game of hockey, playing the game of hockey. I think that's with every sport too. You learn how to deal with adversity, and you battle through it, and you figure out a way to succeed and win, and you take the losses, you learn from them. And like now there's a lot of watching tape and watching video and seeing what you did wrong. And I think in life, that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to look back and see what you did wrong, take your losses, learn from it, and figure out how to adapt and succeed. And I think that's kind of, goes with everything you do in life. If you want to succeed, you got to learn to adapt, and you got to learn to grow and learn and work hard, I think, is the biggest thing, in which hockey definitely teaches you. If you're not working hard, you're not going to go very far.
Yeah.
In general, I think just sports do a great job of making sure that you're learning from your failures more than you're relishing your successes, right? Especially the games that we've played and that you've played. A lot of the time, you're going to witness and experience failure, right? You're gonna have shooting percentages well low, like what you'd have in other sports for like basketball, for example. Like you want a good shooting percentage is like 70%. While in baseball, a good batting average is batting 300. In hockey, I can only imagine. Like I'm not experienced in the statistics part of it yet, but can kind of understand what I'm getting at. So
yep.
I think it's a really good correlation to the idea that failure actually is the true building block for character. It helps build who we are, and I can see that now with learning about who you are as a person, as well as just talking about all the stuff that's going on. And so it's again nice to see a comparison between not only sports but different backgrounds and opportunities as well. So
definitely,
yeah, I'm kind of glad that this conversation took that turn. And obviously, sports are just going to teach you a multitude of lessons. But like what Austin said, that failure, I mean, without it, everybody wins, or those, the whole participation trophy thing.
Yep.
And in some ways, in youth sports, you need that to make sure they're coming back and give the sport a chance to teach you, if that makes sense. But, through giving back like you do and tailoring to youth and making sure they get the most out of the game, as opposed to just letting the game, run all over you, or, you kind of can control your own destiny. There's a coachism from when I coached, yep. But you know what I mean? Like it's really cool.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I'm not too fond of the participation trophies nowadays, but yeah, there's some, I guess you could see some benefits to it at an early age, but yeah, my son hopefully doesn't get a lot of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually just going to ask, have you sort of put in place that culture at home with your children to sort of get them into the hockey thing, or like has that been an interest for them, or they just pick that up on their own, or like...
Yeah, my 4-year-old wants to play 24/7, and I'm like, dude, chill out. Like, I don't want to play right now. I want to sit here and relax. But no, I think him just being around me, playing, and he's old enough now to where he can go in the locker room and hang out with the guys, and he understands what's going on in the games, which is really cool to have. And I think he sees how hard I work and how dedicated I am into everything that goes on in it. And he picks up on that stuff, even though he's only 4. And he loves the game, but he also is 4 and loves doing anything. So he likes basketball, baseball. He wants to play hockey at 1 second, basketball the next second. So he's nuts right now, but he definitely loves playing hockey.
Awesome.
Awesome to hear. So you kind of had a lot of accolades growing up, right? You're chosen to represent the United States. You have good years at Denver. Was there ever a point where you kind of let that get to your head, or were you always kind of that work ethic, takes over, right? And you don't kind of, like we said before, like don't let the successes kind of cloud your mission, right? You know what I mean? Like, was that the case for you, or did you kind of like relax a little bit, No,
I like I said, I was naive. Like from Oklahoma, no one ever did this from Oklahoma. So I did a lot of new things that no one ever did that I grew up watching. Like I didn't grow up watching a ton of hockey. I grew up going to the Oklahoma City Blazers games, which were a central hockey league, like a lower pro league. So I thought that was like the best thing ever. But I mean, it's one of those things. Like I said, I was naive when I played World Juniors, and I was a top 20 player in the U.S. for my age group, and we won gold. So it's one of those things that I think my dad did a good job of keeping me level-headed, and also like we didn't have Instagram and Twitter, and you couldn't see, you couldn't.
Yeah.
I had no clue what was going on really. I was naive to it, and nowadays I probably wouldn't have been with everything that's Instagram and, like I said, all that stuff. But just coming from Oklahoma and not seeing anyone ever do it, like I didn't really know. Like I knew what was going on, but I didn't like think about it too much. I just lived my life and I worked hard, and my dad instilled that hard work mentality, and I never really felt like I made it. Like I still don't feel like I made it. Like even though I played in the NHL for a couple years and won a World Junior Championship, like I feel like I still could be a regular in the NHL and make millions of dollars. But obviously life isn't like that. And there's some things you can't control and some things you can. And a lot of the times life doesn't work out the way you want it to. But at the same time, it's like I accomplished a lot of things. But I never really sit back and look at that stuff. I always just take one day at a time and go to the rink and say, I need to work hard today and try and get better and try to be the best that I can be.
Yeah, that's a really great outlook on that. Obviously my experience is a lot different, right, when in sports and things, but even like accepting or falling in love with the process, I think, like you said, you're going to go to the rink, you're going to work hard. Or, you're going to work on this paper and, get that done, like in our case with academics and things. And then you kind of don't realize, like, you don't think you're there. There's always that next step that you want to, and that's that adapting and overcoming. We'll get back to that again. We should just retitle the podcast. But, being able to not be complacent and find something else to do. I think that's really important to how you approach life. And like you said, take it one day at a time. So.
Yeah, that's my thinking, and it still is. And I just live life one day at a time and work hard at whatever I'm doing that day.
Yeah.
So I guess Ben and I's podcast, we're really big on perspective. We love gaining insight as to what has brought an individual to where they are today, their background and all that sort of things. And one thing that caught my eye in this conversation was the amount of places that you've been and the amount of people that you've met. And this is sort of not off the record, but something that we haven't discussed about this. But if you could, who was an individual in that process that inspired you the most? Like somebody, I know you worked with your dad a lot. He taught you the game of hockey. You went to his rink to practice and like get acclimated to the sport and all that sort of stuff. And I think Ben and I can have that father figure as our model as well. But who would be that for you? Who's that person that really inspired you the most?
It's hard to say. Like you said, I've been so many different places and seen so many people, met so many people and seen so many different places. But I think it would have to be my dad. Like I'm so close with him. I talk to him every day, and he's been with me every step of the way. And he's pretty much gotten me where I am today, and I wouldn't be here without him. With his support and financially and emotionally and mentally, and it's to this day he's still there for me whenever I need him. So I know that's probably not the answer you guys wanted. You wanted me to say like the Prince of Sweden or something, but no, that's that would probably be the answer.
Yeah, that's right up our alley. So that's great.
Another thing that we're kind of about, and then we can end here, is we love music. It's always on. We have some joint playlists together. So is there anything that like you're really about, like your go-to artist? And it doesn't have to be for hockey, to get you jacked up before a game or anything like that. But like, is there a favorite artist or genre that you really like stick with? Or are you kind of like most people that say like I'm all over the board? Like, is there one specific kind of type of music that you like?
Well, I'm from Oklahoma, so it's got to be country.
Yeah.
But you don't want this answer, but I am all over the board. But I like everything. I listen to, if there's one thing, it's probably country that I listen to the most. But I like everything from Oklahoma people, like old school Garth Brooks, and to new school like Morgan Wallen and Luke Combs, and so I like everything. But if I had to choose one, it'd be country.
Are you in the locker room? Are you kind of on your own island with that, or are there similar personalities like that? Because obviously you're from Oklahoma, right? I mean,
yeah. There are some people that like country, but mainly, well, especially now with the young kids, they like EDM and all the new crap.
Yeah.
Doesn't have words and stuff. I can't stand that. But I feel like I'm an old grandpa in the locker room when these kids are listening to the new rappers and stuff, and I'm just like, this is not for me.
One last question. So I introduced Austin to the Oklahoma City Memorial, right? And I did a research project on it last semester in grad school. But what can you say about the community of Oklahoma and how they the Oklahoma standard and things like that, and what this state, I guess, is kind of all about, like their MO?
I mean, I feel like it's just a big, I don't know if it's all the South or just Oklahoma, but everyone's so nice here. Everyone's such a family.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like I've lived so many places, and nothing's like being back in Oklahoma or the South, where everyone holds a door open for you or says thank you or you're welcome. And you don't get that everywhere, and people don't realize that. If you're from here, it's just a way of life, and everyone's really nice and says how you're doing and how you doing, and just to random people. And it's a way of life here, and it keeps us coming back because it's hard to find. It really is. I've seen all parts of the world, and there's nothing quite like being home in Oklahoma and the people here in Oklahoma.
Yeah, as much as we try, the Midwest, Wisconsin, to be, really nice, and I think Wisconsin as a whole, is on the nicer side, right?
Yeah.
But there's something, that nostalgia of being home. Like you said, everybody, is welcoming, and I kind of get that sense here, and I've been here for 6 months, so.
Yeah. Well, and I've been here for 3 days. I don't want to say that I fell in love with it, because obviously it'd have to take a little bit more for me to get introduced to everything fully to make it a non-biased decision. But I noticed it right away. Besides the turnpike and the speed limits and stuff like that, everybody it just had that feeling that there's a strong sense of community, especially when visiting the memorial. That was I could feel it. I was never a part of it. I wasn't even born when it happened, but I felt that exactly. I felt that sense of community, and I could probably make an assumption. I know assumptions aren't always good, but in events in the future, I feel like that community sense is just going to be, it's just going to be exponentially, important forever in this state, as well as I think it can exist in the rest of the South as well. And the
country
rest of the,
more of it.
a little bit, a little bit of that community sense we need to have in a couple more facets of our nation. But I love this state, and I love the city of Norman and Oklahoma City. And I've only been here for 3 days, so I can imagine what it's like to be able to call it home. And
everyone asks, like, what's Oklahoma like? No one goes to Oklahoma. So what's Oklahoma like? Like, there's no I just say there's no reason to go there, but it's a good place to raise a family and live, because everyone's nice, and it's cheap. It's relatively cheap, and it's a big family there. And going back to the bombing memorial, I was actually in preschool about 3 blocks away when that happened.
Oh, wow.
And we were outside. Yeah, I remember being on the playground when it happened, and all the windows on our building shattering. And it was really scary. My parents had to come pick me up like right after it happened, because we were so close. It was a scary time. But it's definitely brought people closer together, and that memorial is amazing.
Yeah, incredible. It was very powerful, especially an external person to it.
Yeah,
it was very powerful.
Next time he comes down, we're gonna go through the museum, actually, because I had just been through it. But me and my girlfriend went there, and it's like we both teamed up. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah, very cool.
And it sucks that something like that. On one side, it's incredible to see the coming together, because I did my research project on it, and it's I could spend so many more pages talking about it, because I just kind of focus on how the memorial came to be and like the designs and things like that. But you're right; it's just this incredible sense of community, and it just radiated throughout the state, and I want to say throughout the country too at that time. But again, like we both didn't learn about it in school, and it wasn't until a couple of years ago that it was mandated in K through 12 in Oklahoma in curriculum.
Oh, really?
Yeah, kind of. I went through that, and again, it's something that hopefully doesn't get kind of fall through the cracks, and I don't think it will with a memorial like that, and and the amount of survivors and the stories and all that. But yeah. No, we want to thank you for your time. I know you're a busy guy figuring things out with your season and everything. But no, we're really grateful that you were able to join us, and
appreciate you coming on. It was a blast talking to you and hearing your perspective and your story. For sure, you got another fan out of me. Just
play my character on.
We did the other day. Yeah.
Am I any good?
Yeah, I mean, he scored on me.
I scored
on
average.
But yeah, we really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us.
No, I appreciate you guys having me, and it was nice to meet you guys.
Yeah. So we'll see you next week on the Weekly Boost. Be sure to check out our new shop that just dropped. We'll see you next time.
Yep. Take care.